makes a good superhero?
Oh, golly. He has to be unique, he has to be different, he has to be empathetic, you have to care about him, and he has to have a weakness. If one of the problems with Superman for me, and for the company that owned Superman, was that he had no weakness. They had to invent Krypton just to get something that would make you worry about when he was fighting somebody.
You're famous for, you give them flaws, right? You like your superheroes to have some flaws. Some.
They have to have flaws, because even, I hate to say this, but even I am flawed. Everybody is flawed.
You, Stan?
I know, it's hard to believe.
What keeps you going?
We're
going to talk about your new venture in the next segment,
well,
but you're 91 now, right?
Yeah. Oh, you should have seen me when I was 89, when I was a spark plug.
Oh, you were a killer then. How did you get famous? What made us know Stan Lee? Why do I know Stan Lee? And that's who I know in comic books.
I'd like to think because I'm such a wonderful television guest. But other than that...
No, why you?
What I did was I signed my name and the artist's name on every story that we did. So any story would say by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, by Stan Lee and John Buscema, by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and John Romita, and on and on. So I guess if people read enough books and saw my name in all of them, they got to know me. And then I tried to personalize our comic books. Instead of just the stories, I wrote little messages. I had a column called Stan's Soapbox, where I would just talk to the readers, not even necessarily about comics, anything that came to mind. I was like a literary Alan, what's your name again? Larry King, like a...
Do you think this has kept you young, this life you lead?
Maybe. It's kept me energetic, certainly, because I love what I do, and I can't wait to wake up the next morning and do another story or edit a story.
Do you write with young people in mind?
No.
No?
I write with myself in mind.
What's it like when you see one of your creations come to life? You created Iron Man, and then you see Robert Downey.
Oh,
well, that must be
magnificent.
A hoot. That must be a hoot for you.
It is. It really is. And as I say, without any help from me, they are creating such beautiful movies, producing the greatest. I mean, I love seeing these movies, just like any typical fan.
We're back with Stan Lee's. Looking forward to Stan Lee's Mighty 7. You're 91. You don't look at, you feel 91. What's it like to feel 91?
I don't know. I hope I never find out.
Do you fear death?
I don't fear death. I'm curious. I can't imagine what it could be like. Because I personally feel when you die, that's the end. It's like a machine that the engine is off.
I think that's it.
But how can there be nothing forever? You know what I mean?
Because
forever.
It's hard to imagine.
I can't believe it.
To not exist.
Yeah, so I almost can't wait to find out, but I'm not in a big rush.
You wanted to be a serious writer. How did you get into comics?
Well, I needed a job.
Where was this? New York?
This was in New York, yes. I applied. There was a publishing company, and a cousin of mine ran it, and I heard that there was an opening there. And they published mystery books, girly books, sport books, all kind of books. And they also had a little comic book line. And I didn't know where they needed the assistant. It happened to be in the comic book line. So I was hired by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and I was supposed to fill the ink wells. You know, they used ink in those days. I'd run down and buy them a sandwich and do proofreading, things like that. After a while, Joe and Jack left. I was the only guy left in the department, and I was about 17 and a half. And the publisher came in and said, Stan, can you run things until I find a grown-up? Well, when you're 17 and a half, what do you know? I said, sure, I'll handle it. And he must have forgotten to look for a grown-up, because I stayed there ever since. I became the head writer, the editor, and the art director.
You were known in World War II as the playwright, right?
Yeah, I worked in a group that did training films and instructional manuals for the troops. And William Saroyan was there, and there were a lot of big-name Hollywood people were there. I was like the token nobody in that group.
How did Spider-Man come about?
I needed a superhero. I had done the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, and my publisher said, hey, they're doing well, do another one. So I came up with Spider-Man, and I said to him, I got this great idea. I want to call him Spider-Man, and he's a teenager. So I gave him the idea, and he said, Stan, that is the worst idea I have ever heard. He said, first of all, people hate spiders. You can't call a hero Spider-Man. Secondly, he said, he can't be a teenager. Teenagers are only sidekicks. And finally, he can't have personal problems. Don't you know what a superhero is? So he wouldn't let me do it. One day we had a book we were going to kill called Amazing Fantasy. When you're going to do the last issue, nobody cares what you put in it. Just to get it out of my system, I put Spider-Man in the book, and we sold it. And it was a bestseller. So my publisher called me in a couple of weeks later. He said, Stan, you remember that character, Spider-Man, that you and I liked so much? Why don't you do a series of it? And that's how Spidey was born.
Of your characters, who would you choose to protect you from evil?
Any one of them. They're all
Who would be
great.
your best friend?
Probably Spider-Man. No, but and I think Iron Man. Iron Man is my type of guy.
Who you want to have a beer with?
Iron Man.
Who would you like to date your daughter?
Captain America.
If Larry King were a superpower, what would my power be?
A voice.
Ah.
I have a character with a voice that is a superpower, actually.
Was there ever a time you thought about quitting the business?
Yes, just before I did the Fantastic Four. I said to my wife, I'm sick of doing these kind of stories, because at that time, my publisher said, don't worry about characterization, don't worry about plot, just give me a lot of action. That's what the kids want, action. And I was giving them a lot of action. I said, I want to write a story, not just all that nonsense. So Joni said to me, if you want to quit before you do, write one book the way you'd like to do it. The worst that can happen is he'll fire you and you want to quit anyway. And that's when I did the Fantastic Four. Luckily, it sold, so then I was able to do the books my way.
Does your success, mine surprises me. Does it surprise you?
Oh, yes.
You pinch yourself?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, me too. You dreamed of writing the great American novel, didn't you?
I did years ago. That's why I changed my name to Stan Lee. I didn't want to use my real name for these silly comic books. But then I became known more for the comics as anything, so I legally changed my name to Stan Lee.
What was it?
My name was Stanley Martin Lieber, a real normal name.
Nice. That sounds like a Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yeah. In fact, I used to write a signature, Stanley Martin Lieber, as if I imagined someday it would be a famous name.